So let's just get into the main story here. Obviously, CPAC 2019, a very interesting year, a year that has banned a lot of right-wing controversial figures, but allowed a lot of left-wing controversial figures like Jared Holt, the right-wing watch, who was here. A lot of liberal journalists were allowed in, given access here. And it's been very difficult to kind of do confrontations. Security is extremely locked down here. I mean, even just being able to enter into Trump's speech was a huge ordeal. I mean, roads are being shut down. You have to go through different mazes, ID checks and everything. But I think this year, what was really more significant is there was really no attendance by the Rand Paul kind of libertarian community like there usually is. There usually was a strong presence here. There was really very little NRA presence. And it's really more of the kind of Trump establishment, more of the Trump kind of doctrine. A lot of talk about the wall, a lot of talk about socialism. Very interestingly, a lot of talk about online censorship, college censorship, and I believe the second most popular name that was ushered here was Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, which has been, a lot of people here have been obsessing about it. What have you noticed from your experiences here before we get into Trump's 2-hour crazy bombastic speech?
Yeah, so I'm here with my friend Heather Mullins, and the observation I had was sort of similar to yours, which was that there were some people who don't neatly fit into conservatism, but do fit into what you might call the right wing, right? So that would be people like Nick Fuentes, and as well as Jacob Wall, who basically had this press conference right in the lobby, but wasn't allowed kind of into the conference itself.
With an interesting security guard with Apple AirPods.
Yeah, with this Apple earbud who's like a security man. Who the guy looks like he was maybe 5'6". So yeah, there were a lot of oddities about that press conference, including that he also handed out a press release that said strictly confidential. But in any event, so CPAC did have some right-wing figures that they wouldn't let in. But then in spite of that, yes, Right Wing Watch had a person here named Jared Holt, of course, and as well, I forget the name of the woman, but I saw a reporter on Twitter who literally wrote, "I'm still credentialed at CPAC, so I have to stay here in the bad place." And it was a picture of her with her head down. So CPAC has credentialed, and I mean, I guess you could give them credit for that, which is that they're credentialing kind of anybody, regardless of if that reporting is going to be sort of negative toward them. So, I mean, you can certainly spin that in a positive way.
And there's been
as well, but that's been my observation, that it seems like basically anybody has been able to get press access.
And there's been a lot of negative complaining press coverage. I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, imagine if every national event was dealt with so much scrutiny, with so much negativity, with so much epitome of like, sorry, we're getting distracted here by other people. But Trump came in, obviously he was the main draw here, brought in all the speakers, talked for over 2 hours. He was a half an hour late. Some of the things that stick out to me was Trump, trying new kind of buzzwords. He was saying collusion, delusion. He even said bullshizzle, not bullshizzle, but the bad word, when it came to him being targeted about this Russian probe, and the crowd kind of cheered. He really knows how to put on a show. He really knows how to talk to the common person, simplify it, and be a very likable guy, because he saw it from the crowd. The way he was talking to them, the way he was, his stage and prominence, the way he was making fun of the mainstream media. It was something that these people ate up. But of course, there was also other things that I think he shouldn't be talking about. You could see a lot of his ego coming out, especially when he was talking about how many people showed up to his inauguration, saying that the crowds were, no, the crowds were wide. Just because they weren't long doesn't mean anything. How women were walking with heels across there. And I'm like, what, Trump, come on now. What are you doing? There was also a different kind of talk that you just tweeted about that's getting a lot of controversy right now that I think would be interesting to inject here.
Yeah, so I did want to say about the speech that one thing he said that absolutely was true was that he went off script, and he said, this is what happens. I go off script and everybody loves it, and this is how we won. I think just reading the room and just generally speaking at his rallies, that's what people love about him, is the off script. When he goes off the teleprompter, that's when it's always the most fun. And that's why I got so addicted to it that it took 2 hours. But yeah, so one thing that he said struck a note that really bothered some of his initial, the much harder right base, the kinds of people who are not allowed at CPAC this year, which is that he said that the economy is going so well, that there's all these new jobs being made, that we're going to need more immigrants to come in and take the jobs. And that's a pretty traditional American point of view. That's certainly a Reagan-esque point of view. I think that that's something that most Democrats would celebrate if it wasn't coming out of Trump's mouth. But I got some retweets from Faith Goldie and Richard Spencer, specifically, who are both known as kind of alt-right figures. These are not just build the wall types, but against legal immigration as well. And they both kind of initially supported Trump, but over the last 2 years have kind of been getting more and more disenfranchised from Trump as the leader of the alt-right as opposed to conservatives or things like that. So now I'm getting a ton of replies because of that, of these people who are saying, Trump is dead to us and all that kind of stuff, because he has a pro-legal immigration message where he is still, saying we want the wall. He's still saying, it's on merit, the immigration that we're having. But it's not anti-immigrant rhetoric in the way that some of the alt-right people kind of expected from him.
Yeah. A kind of bigger kind of verbal concession, just like we saw on gun rights, where he banned kind of bump stocks, and the right was like, oh, okay. If Barack Obama would have done that, there would have been a huge outcry. And I think that also leads to kind of the significance of the lesser presence by the NRA, which usually has a very significant presence here. He also said a lot of things about the Green New Deal. He said he loves the Green New Deal. He supports the Green New Deal. He hopes it's the issue of 2020. Of course, saying that sarcastically, bringing up a lot of the new kind of politicians that are coming into Washington, D.C., because this really does seem, even some people have theorized that people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the Somali congresswoman, I forgot her name, Iman Omar, who are also coming in, that these people are being pushed to the front by the right-wingers so they could actually topple and fall down when it comes to the kind of left-wing Democratic establishment power. There's been theories about that. But honestly, seeing Trump talk and the way he just conveyed that stage, other than, of course, some kind of bigger, mistruths out there, people didn't care. People are like, yeah, he had a bigger crowd size during inauguration. He had people convinced, and he is an excellent speech maker. And 2020 is really going to be an interesting year. A lot of people are counting him out, but from what I've seen in person and the energy in that room, it's going to be difficult.
I think Trump's very good at convincing his base of whatever the position is that he wants to talk about. It was interesting that he actually said some of you guys might not like this before he said that he wants to increase the number of merit-based immigrants. And then when he described that position, that if it was Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders who said, let's increase the number of immigrants on merit, there are probably some conservatives who wouldn't have been fond of that. So I think Trump is right in saying maybe his base wouldn't have been for it. When he explained it coming out of his mouth, he got cheers of USA, USA, right? So he, to his audience, to his base, he is very, very convincing. They will listen to what he says, and they will go along with it. So he's a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. And he was bringing up, of course, North Korea, Otto Warman as well. He brought up the kid who got punched in Berkeley.
Literally brought him up. He literally brought him up to the stage.
Yeah. So, obviously, huge stage presence. But one of the things that I found really significant about his speech is that a big part of it was talking about bringing the troops home. He was like, we need to bring the troops home. Bring the troops home, build infrastructure here. He was talking about how he was in Washington, D.C. during the government shutdown all by himself with Ivanka, who left for Florida. He was like, I was sitting there all alone. Don't cry for me. And then I was like, let's go to Iraq to try to bring the troops back to find out what's going on, because he said military generals were telling him to bring the troops back home. It's going to take about 2 years. He said that he decided to take this trip because of that. He described in great detail how he was landing and how Air Force One had to shut off the lights. And he said the United States government spent $7 trillion, and we have to still land in this area after we invested so much in there without even having the lights on. He talked about great detail about meeting U.S. General Raisin Kane.
He really likes that, the Raisin thing. He just loved saying the name over and over, General Raisin.
He just loved him because of his name. And he asked General Raisin Kane, he's like, okay, what do we need to do to get out of here? Raisin Kane supposedly said 2 weeks. It's been far 2 weeks. And this is the thing that we have to kind of talk about here. He talks a good game. He could galvanize a whole bunch of people. But at the same time, let's fact check him a little bit. The whole Jared Kushner thing that happened this week, not good. What happened to General Raisin Kane's 2-week proposal to get the troops out? Trump said he loved that idea. He loved General Raisin Kane. Again, it's been far more than just 2 weeks from this plan. And
for someone who cares about being anti-war, as you do, I think that it's definitely a positive development to see people at a conservative conference being excited about the idea of bring the troops home. That's a positive development, at least in terms of politics. The question is, of course, whether it goes into actual action, whether Trump is going to be driven by his base to bring the troops home because he told them that's what a good thing would be.
Yeah, and obviously the issue is far more complex, especially with Syria, with 200 troops now remaining, with him even saying, we're bringing some of the troops back, now from Syria. But again, the troops are remaining. There's a lot of obstacles. He surrounded himself with a lot of war hawks. And even people here at some of the sessions here, they were like, Trump is making America great again by leading, by attacking people and fighting bad people all over the world. And I'm like, that is the most insane kind of rational thinking that doesn't exist. And it's just utterly, utterly.
He ran on America First, which was supposed to be,
bring the troops back.
Bring the troops back, attack when attacked. But I mean, he brought an anti-war nationalist message, basically.
Yeah, very nationalistic, but also very conceding to the other side. Very, very interesting speech. 2 hours off the cuff. I don't think he was reading the teleprompters. He had teleprompters, but he was just going off about things that were happening on the stage, against media, about specific issues, about specific people in the crowd. Really, really an excellent speech maker, but yet again, needs to be fact-checked on a lot of the bigger things that he does. Anything else you want to say about CPAC, Ford?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's been interesting. It's a very funny contrast between Pence and Trump, where Pence probably almost entirely stuck to the script and very popular speech. I remember when he said the U.S. Space Force, and everybody's clapping and cheering, and there's a lot of Space Force T-shirts and hats going around that people are paying $35 for a ball cap, Space Force on it, but that's how excited they are about it. So Pence also very popular, but a totally different style of oration. His speeches are just completely different than Trump's, and both are popular. I think that was probably one of the critical parts of how he got elected, was to remind, to those, dare I say, boring conservatives, right? Pence has something to offer, whereas Trump is kind of exciting and attracting a different kind of listener.
Yeah, a lot of crony capitalism here, as we're showing the sandwiches being wheeled by $20 cold fry festival sandwiches. I'm very frustrated at that because I'm hungry.
The most critical thing that you wrote was about the $20 sandwiches.
It's just ridiculous, but obviously a lot of different things discussed, a lot of different things taken away from this. My main takeaway is just Trump definitely has a big ego, but definitely needs to be fact-checked on a lot of this ego. I've been tweeting about the cold sandwiches here, so check me out on Twitter for those details. Luke, We Are Change. Ford, where can people find you? Also another independent journalist doing great work.
So my outlet is called News to Share. I have a Facebook page called News to Share that I do live streams and raw video, a YouTube page, News to Share. My profile is at Ford Fisher. I'm also here with Heather Mullins, who is at Talk Mullins on Twitter.
Beautiful. Ford, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate your time, input, and having a riot, buddy. So thank you, buddy.
Awesome. Let me know when the next riot's coming.
Awesome. All right, man. So yeah, that's our take here from CPAC. Let me know what you guys thought, especially in the comments, especially if you have any animalistic comments that you guys want to make with the super chats. We would love to hear those. And Jason will be reading off the super chats.
So Luke says, I just want to add, Luke, like you said, you're so spot on that it doesn't seem to matter what the guy says to these people that are rabidly in favor of him. The cheers keep coming. And now him saying he's going to stretch this pullout over 2 years, Luke, come on. Oh, just in time for the next election cycle. Better get Trump in there or we'll never get out of this war. It's a big problem. And we've got to stop relying on these demagogues to, say they're going to save us, and then we just believe them. To me, the bigger thing for me was at the end of it, he's got the Rolling Stones playing You Can't Always Get What You Want. You could say whatever you want about Trump. He knows how to get an audience. He has bravado. That, to me, I laughed. I'm like, you know what? It's hard not to like the guy. I mean, he's playing a song that basically says, F you all for not loving everything I do.
That's pretty much the theme. That's pretty much the Trump doctrine.